Yeah. It's kind of hot right now, so I'm sweating a lot. It's like over 90 degrees, and I know I look like a drowned rat, but kind of go beyond that. And I hope that you'll just listen to what I have to say. And I wanted to say a few words about the Charlie Kirk incident. They had his memorial yesterday, and so we watched that, and it was incredibly moving. And if you haven't seen that, I suggest that you watch at least some of the highlights of that. But what I wanted to focus on with this video is some of the reactions to his demise. And I think that if you could sum up the reactions in one word, it would be astonishing. First of all, on the positive side, just the outpouring of grief worldwide regarding his death. And it wasn't just Americans, it's all over in Europe and like Asia, like South Korea, and all over the world, people were mourning his death. And I think that's, if you stop and think about it, that's quite incredible, because here he is, he's just to me, he's a young kid. He was in his early 30s. And for him to have had that much influence on people, to have touched that many people, not just in one country, but globally, I think that's incredible. And so there's a lot of people worldwide that are celebrating his life and mourning his death. And so that's I think one thing that's kind of astonishing, kind of amazing, the extent of his influence, the extent of his reach. And it's not just globally, but it's also generationally too. He touched a lot of Generation Z, and maybe even some of Generation Alpha, but yeah, a lot of the younger generation, the kids. I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but just, relative to my viewpoint, shall we say. But yeah, the positive influence that he's had on a lot of the younger generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, especially the males, encouraging them to, figure out what they want to do in life and to pursue it, and a lot of people tend to hold up a job or some position as being the most important thing in life. But he said, no, the most important thing you can do in life is to, find somebody, fall in love, and have a family, and raise good children. And I think that is an important legacy. And I've touched on it before personally. Yeah. Yeah, so he had a tremendous influence worldwide and generationally, and I was listening to some other videos today, and they estimated that there were at least 1 million people that were watching the stream of his memorial service. So that says a lot about the man. It says a lot about all the lives that he's touched. So I think that's very astonishing, how much influence, positive influence, that he had on so many people. And then the other thing that I find absolutely astonishing, and I think a lot of other people do too, is all the, and this is now the negative side, but all the glee and rejoicing and celebrating the fact that you have a man. He was a father. He was a husband. He was a son. He had young children. All he wanted to do was have discussions with people. He didn't want to coerce anybody to do anything or anything, just have a dialogue. And he was killed. He was killed for that because somebody wanted him to be quiet. And you've got, that's shocking enough. But then you have people who are dancing on the man's grave. They are openly, and the thing is, they have no shame. They don't even try to hide it. They are openly rejoicing that another human being has lost his life. And not merely lost his life, but lost it in such a brutal and violent way. And they are rejoicing. They're glad. They're singing about it. They're dancing. They're celebrating. That just blows my mind. And one of the things that I find most disturbing is it's not just young kids. It's not just, college kids. But it's people that ought to know better. People who are professional, so-called professional. You've got teachers and medical workers and first responders. And they're acting like this. They are also dancing on the man's grave and rejoicing that a human life has been snuffed out needlessly. And I don't know about you, but if I found out my doctor was doing that, I wouldn't want anything to do with that man. I wouldn't want any doctor to treat me. I wouldn't want to be under his knife on an operating table if he had the attitude that, well, I disagree with you, so therefore, I'm happy you're dead. These medical people, they are supposed to be on the side of life. They're supposed to be on the side of alleviating suffering. And for them to openly rejoice at the murder of someone, that is depravity. I can't imagine the depths of depravity you have to be in to have that mindset. And then you've got teachers. You've got people in charge of children, sometimes young children, small ones, grade school or junior high or even high school. They're celebrating this. There's one teacher that supposedly made his students watch the video of the assassination over and over and over again. Where is the humanity? Where have these people lost their soul? I don't get it. And a lot of us do not get it. A lot of us normal people say, wait, this is wrong. So that's what we find so astonishing, shocking, disturbing, whatever you want to call it. And it's not only that, they're also, not only are they dancing on his grave, but they're slandering him and calling him vile names. They're mocking him. They're wishing harm upon his family, upon his grieving widow, upon his children who will grow up without their father. They will never get to hear him read a bedtime story to them again. These people are wishing harm upon these suffering, innocent people. Where's the humanity? How can you have any heart? How can you have any soul and engage in such vile, contemptible behavior? And it gets worse, because these same people that are mocking him and rejoicing in his death, they're also running around saying, oh yeah, if you believe the same way he did, you're next. They're openly, well, kind of veiled. I suppose if it were outright open, then the police could do something. But they're issuing veiled threats. They're, in so many words, they're saying, if you believe the same thing he did, you're next. They want to silence any conservative voice. Anybody who, and it's actually not just conservative, it's moderates too. Anybody who doesn't agree exactly with them, they want them. What's up with that? honestly, how black must your heart be to engage in that kind of behavior? So that is just absolutely shocking. And because it's so shocking, people are waking up. And I think that's kind of one of the silver linings about this, that people are waking up to the fact that there are people who literally want you gone, as in no longer on this earth, simply because you don't agree with them. What's up with that? You know, Charlie was a Christian, and I'm a Christian too, but you don't have to be a Christian to be disturbed by this. Hopefully, whether you are a Christian or not, I hope that you are, disturbed by this appalling depravity exhibited by so many. He was a Christian man. He encouraged open debate. Okay, he just wanted a dialogue. He didn't want to argue with anybody as being contentious, but he just said, here's what I believe. What do you believe? Let's have a discussion. That's what he was about. He was about having a discussion. And those that disagreed with him could not stand that. They did not want him to talk at all. And if you stop and think about it, that's the telltale sign of a losing argument. You can't win the argument, so all you can think about is shutting up the other side. So, I think one thing that the left, or whoever, okay, forget about left, right. Let's think in terms of right and wrong. Those that wish his death, those that rejoiced in his death, the one thing that they forgot is that simply by killing the man, you do not kill the message. And now his message is going to reverberate farther and louder and longer than it could have ever spread with just his voice alone, because now his voice has been multiplied by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions. So that's a silver lining, because how many of us now are going to take up his position, his message, and say, hey, let's have a talk? And that's kind of what I've been, in my own little way, I've been trying to encourage that here. They say, I generally end these videos with, let's have a discussion in the comments. So that's my own feeble attempt at doing the same thing, but it comes from the same perspective, and it has the same desire. Let's talk. You may not agree with everything that I have to say, but that's okay. I hope to persuade you, but I'm not your enemy. I want to talk. Charlie was not your enemy. He wanted to talk. So, I think the danger is that with so many people having this attitude of gleeful joy and dancing on the man's grave, remember this. This is the future that they envision for all. Not just, again, don't break it up into left or right or conservative or whatever. This is a future that they envision for all who disagree with them. That should disturb you. that future is something that should disturb you. Let us hope and pray that it doesn't come to that. I just want to close with something that I wrote down, and so I'm going to read it and leave it there for you to think about. So I will close with these words. What does it say about a society when debate and reasoned discourse is scorned in favor of brutal violence? It is a society on the brink of collapse. Tolerance was once a hallmark of a civil society. As it has been said, I disapprove of what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Although there is no evidence that Voltaire ever uttered these words, he would nonetheless be horrified to discover the abysmal state of modern discourse, where presentation of facts, rational debate, and impassioned persuasion have sadly given way to not merely to logical fallacies such as appeal to authority, the heckler's veto, and ad hominem attacks, but to shutting down debate by any means, even going so far as to murder in cold blood. How did we get to this place? So I hope I've given you something to think about. I will take up this thought about how did we get to this place. I will take this up in an upcoming video. I have to solidify my thoughts about that. But yeah, what do you think? Whether you were against him or for him, what do you think? How did we get to this place? Because if we want to avoid a violent, brutal future, we need to understand how we got to this place and how can we avoid going further down this path. So, I hope I've given you something to think about. I hope you give it a like, thumbs up, and share. And please, let's have a discussion in the comments. It doesn't have to get nasty. We're just talking. Bye.